All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're zooming way in to uncover the absolute foundation of every living thing around us, the cell.
We've got a lot of ground to cover. We'll start with the basic unit of life, explore how we even discover this invisible microscopic world, and break down the formulation of the cell theory. From there, we'll look at the difference between single-celled and multi-celled life, compare prokaryotes and eukaryotes, and finally put plant and animal cells head-to-head.
So starting right at the beginning with the unit of life itself, our building blocks.
To really grasp the massive scale of microscopic life, think about a physical house. A house is constructed by stacking thousands, right? Sometimes tens of thousands of individual bricks. While complex living organisms, including you, me, and the trees outside, are built exactly the same way. We're assembled from countless, invisible cells. The brick is the fundamental unit of the house, just as the cell is the fundamental unit of the organism.
And it's incredible to see how this builds up in a biological system. Think of it like climbing a ladder of complexity. It actually starts inside the cell with a tiny organelle, say a chloroplast. A bunch of organelles make up a complete cell. Then, a group of those similar cells come together to form a tissue, like the tissue of a leaf. Those tissues then combine into major organ systems, like a plant's shoot and root systems. And finally, the whole shebang coordinates to create a fully functioning, beautiful organism, like a blooming sunflower.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that the cell is the fundamental structural and functional unit of all life, period. It provides the physical building blocks, and it performs every vital function needed to keep an organism alive. No cells, no life. It's really that simple.
Okay, let's shift gears to discovering the microscopic world and how we started seeing the invisible.
You know, for most of human history, we had literally no clue these building blocks existed, simply because our eyes just aren't powerful enough. Our journey to understanding cells spans from the very first glimpse of a living cell in 1674 all the way to a complete universal cell theory in 1855. We're talking almost 2 whole centuries of intense observation and scientific debate to finally figure out what was going on.
And you have to appreciate the sheer ingenuity of Antony van Leeuwenhoek. In 1674, using a simple single-lens microscope that he literally built himself, which by the way magnified up to 270 times, he became the first person to ever observe living cells. He looked at pond water, but get this, he also scraped dental plaque right off his own teeth. He looked at it and discovered these tiny creatures darting around, which he playfully called animalcules. He basically proved that an entire invisible world of life was thriving right under our noses, or, well, in our mouths.
Moving on to formulating the cell theory, establishing the actual rules of life.
With cells finally visible to science, they desperately needed a framework. Enter a monumental scientific team-up. In 1838, a German botanist, M.J. Schleiden, studied plants and realized, hey, these are all made of cells. The very next year, Theodor Schwann, a German zoologist, studied both animal and plant cells. Together, they laid down 2 massive tenets. First, all living organisms are made of cells and cell products, things like proteins and lipids. And second, the cell is the ultimate structural and functional unit of life.
Now this was an absolute game changer. But their theory had one glaring drawback. It left everyone scratching their heads asking, okay, if everything is made of cells, where do the new cells actually come from? They had absolutely no idea.
That's where Rudolf Virchow swoops in to save the day. In 1855, he solved the mystery, modifying the theory to include cell division. He coined the famous Latin phrase, omnia cellula e cellula, which simply means new cells arise from pre-existing cells. They don't just magically pop into existence out of nowhere, one cell divides to become 2. And with that, the foundational rules of cellular biology were complete.
Now let's talk about counting cells, the difference between one and many.
Knowing where cells come from, we can actually categorize all of life based on the sheer number of them. It basically splits into 2 camps. You've got your unicellular organisms. Think of them as a one-man band. An amoeba or a bacterium is just a single cell that independently handles every single life function. Eating, moving, reproducing, all of it. Then you've got multicellular organisms. This is more like a massive, highly specialized corporation. Humans, plants, and most fungi are made of billions of cells that show a clear division of labor. Some cells handle digestion, some do protection, others do movement.
Which brings us right into prokaryotes versus eukaryotes, exploring cellular complexity.
Because as you'll see, not all cells are built to the same specs. Take a bacterial cell, a classic prokaryote. It's kind of the economy model of the cellular world. It lacks a true, defined nucleus. Instead, its genetic material is just sort of floating out there in a region called the nucleoid. It's got an outer capsule and a tough cell wall made of complex sugars called peptidoglycan, and usually a tail-like flagellum to help it swim. It's incredibly efficient for sure, but structurally, it's pretty bare bones. Now let's compare that side by side with eukaryotes. Eukaryotes, which make up humans, plants, and animals, are the luxury models. They have beautifully well-defined membrane-bound nuclei to protect their linear DNA, complex membrane-bound organelles, and larger ADS ribosomes, which are basically the cell's protein factories. Prokaryotes, like our bacteria friend, stick to circular DNA, smaller 70S ribosomes, no membrane-bound organelles, and they divide through a much simpler process known as binary fission, rather than the complex mitosis and meiosis eukaryotes use.
Finally, let's wrap up with plant versus animal cells and look at some kingdom differences.
Zooming strictly into the eukaryotic luxury models, the differences between plant and animal cells at a microscopic level are just fascinating. Visually, it's night and day. A plant cell is structured with a thick, rigid exterior and this massive central space that literally shoves everything else to the outer edges. An animal cell, on the other hand, is generally rounder, packed totally differently, and it completely lacks that heavy outer armor. Breaking that down, the big takeaway is that plant cells absolutely require a rigid cell wall made of cellulose to stay upright. Animal cells, no cell wall at all. Plants also need that one massive, permanent central vacuole for storage, while we animals just use small temporary ones. And because plants actually make their own food, they are packed with plastids like chloroplasts, which are entirely missing in animals. On the flip side, animal cells have centrioles to help with cell division, something plants don't use. Oh, and when it comes to storing energy, animals pack it away as glycogen, while plants store theirs as starch. So, we've covered an unbelievable amount of ground in this explainer. From Leeuwenhoek scraping his teeth to the highly specialized division of labor happening inside your body right this second, the cell is truly a marvel of nature. It leaves us with this one profound thought. If a single invisible cell has the power to perform every single function essential for life, what other undiscovered microscopic universes are still waiting to be found right inside us? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.